County executives around the state concerned about how they'll balance their budgets if the 2% cap is passed. They say their spending is going up more than 2% a year thanks largely to unfunded mandates from the state. Several leaders were in Albany today to lobby for mandate relief, including Syracuse Mayor Stephanie Miner, who says her city could be broke in the next couple of years if the tax cap is passed without mandate relief. Mayor Miner joins us now to talk about today's efforts. Mayor, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
So let's talk about this. You know, as we said, a lot of the county executives and mayors from across the state have been hollering about this from a long time. You seem to be at the tip of the spear recently. What are you trying to get across to lawmakers here in Albany?
Well, if it's just a property tax cap, with an exception for pensions, for example, then that's really saying we're passing a property tax cap and we're accepting all of the areas that are driving higher property tax caps. If it is one act in and of itself, it's an act of uselessness. But if it's part of a mandate relief, and I believe in talking to a number of legislative leaders today, they understand the issues and the policies that are driving local government's costs, and they do want to address mandate reform, and they're willing to do it. I think it's not a matter of if the property tax cap passes, I think it will pass. And so a large part of what I was doing today was saying there has to be a second part of that, or there is no reason for a property tax cap. And I was very pleased that all of the leaders understood that. They understood in particular for cities' pension costs that are driving our limited revenues out the door. So I think that we have an opportunity once we get through this session to really look at meaningful mandate relief, and if we don't, then we'll just continue it down the downward spiral in terms of economic development that this state is in.
Well, that's just right, and I think you've even said before, unless the mandates are addressed, simply passing the tax cap is really just a symbolic gesture. Now, what about the idea, you know, they're talking about it, we know there really isn't a deal yet in the works, and as you said, if it goes through, it probably would get passed. However, we've got Speaker Silver who says he doesn't want to see the tax cap go through unless it's tied in to rent regulation for a lot of his constituents down in Manhattan. Do you think that's going to be a kind of a hamstring for this effort?
Well, I'm not sure, and I'll leave that to others. I do know that the legislative leaders that I talked to, I said to them very directly that if you pass a property tax cap and if you do address rent control but you don't address unfunded mandates, then you're really leaving upstate cities out in the cold. And counties as well, because it makes no sense to have a property tax cap which exempts pensions when pensions are what's driving us to raise property taxes.
Let's talk a little bit about, you know, all these cities and towns. Everybody's kind of facing the same dire picture, but let's obviously talk about Syracuse specifically. Your biggest concern, and we said to the lead in here that you're facing fiscal insolvency within the next couple of years.
We are. Our pension bills went up 40% in 1 year. The state won't tell us what our pension bills are going to be projected to be past 2012. We spent $28 million in a pension payment, and we had to use $13 million of our fund balance. You can start to see that you just can't continue to do that. In addition, the city of Buffalo is already in a financial control board, and Nassau County at the other end of the state is also in a financial control board. What Nassau County, the city of Buffalo, and the city of Syracuse all have in common are incredibly high pension numbers that we're being forced to pay, and those benefits are being set by policymakers in Albany. We have no control of it. We're just simply sent the bill. And if they want to put in a property tax cap, then they need to address the cost factors that are driving property taxes higher and higher.
You know, and I think the thing when it comes to pensions, you know, a lot of people say these folks have worked hard their entire career. They deserve something when that career comes to an end. But I think what you and other people are saying is how much they get and the way those numbers play out needs to be looked at and reformed.
No, I agree that people who have earned a benefit are entitled to that benefit. But part of what I think the analysis has to be is if Albany, you are setting and saying to people you can retire at 55, you'll have a defined benefit pension plan, that you'll have other benefits like that, then Albany should pay for it. What we have now is a system where Albany is awarding very rich pension benefits and giving unprecedented benefits that you don't have available in the private sector, congratulating themselves for that and simply sending the bill to the localities. And the localities are now being forced in a position where they're choosing between police protection, fire protection, trash removal, and paying pension bills.
Well, that's just, and you also talk about those employees that have a really strong union behind them and using the arbitrator to fund those increases in salaries and pensions.
Well, one of the issues that is also driving this is healthcare costs. In the city of Syracuse, we are budgeting annually a 9% increase in healthcare costs. Because of compulsory interest arbitration, which controls two of our largest unions, police and fire, they have the ability to go to an interest arbitrator who does not have to weigh a municipality's ability to pay. And again, what that does is it brings an independent party into an area, and if they don't have to look at the city of Syracuse, for example's ability to pay, then they can just award increases after increases and not worry about it. Part of what a financial control board does and has done in Buffalo first and now in Nassau County is take away that benefit because it just continues to escalate on itself. You need to be able to look at both sides. You need to be able to look at expenditures and revenues. And unfortunately, the way that Albany has guided policies to date is they have simply just sent the bill to localities and said, we'll figure it out later. And localities are now saying, we have to pick up the trash, we have to clean the snow, we have to chase bad guys and put fires out, and we are losing the ability to do that given these policy decisions that are being driven in Albany.
Well, especially when it comes to that arbitration. Now, it seems to me as an average Joe taxpayer that it's really common sense that they need to look at the municipality's ability to pay. And it shouldn't have to get to the point of, you know, a financial control board coming in and taking things over to eliminate that. How have legislators in Albany, have they been receptive to the idea that they need to change that?
They have been, and I think particularly legislators that represent upstate cities understand the kind of dire decisions that we're making and the place that we are at. And again, I was very heartened by the fact that each of the legislators that I talked to and the leadership today understood the dynamics and understood that you can't have a meaningful property tax cap if you don't address unfunded mandates and or pensions. Part of what is the solution here is getting everyone to recognize first and foremost that there is a problem, and then saying what are the short-term fixes that we can put in and what are the long-term changes that we can make. And I think that we're on a road towards doing that. Clearly, the governor has said that he wants to address it. He's looked at issues when he was Attorney General, like pension spiking or pension padding. That contributes to the pension costs that we have and the issues that we are facing. So we're looking for all of our legislative leaders and the governor to continue to do what they've already started to do and enact meaningful change so that we can have an economic development policy and growth in our state, so we can we don't want to have the moniker of being the most highly taxed state and the poorest growth. We want to flip it around. And
you say, and you've said in the past, you know, you've certainly done your part. I know that since January 2010, I believe, the city of Syracuse has reduced its workforce by about 10%. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're at the lowest number of employees that we have been in modern history. And we have, at the same time, we have had record service calls. It was the fourth snowiest winter in history. We've had tremendous pothole problems because of it, tremendous calls for fire and police. And so while we are really cutting our employees and getting down to the bare minimum, at the same time, our calls for service have increased exponentially.
And consolidating and merging where you can and where it makes sense.
Absolutely. In fact, I think today that there were discussions in the Onondaga County Legislature about merging and taking over the City of Syracuse's purchasing department.
One thing I want to get in before our final couple of minutes here, Mayor, and that's the situation with Destiny USA and the expansion of the Carousel Center Mall out in Syracuse. I know yesterday, I believe it was yesterday evening, you held a press conference saying that the deal for the current expansion piece that's being worked on right now, there was a deadline for yesterday. That's now been extended to December. This is something that has been going on for years between the developers and the city. What was the deal you reached with them, and where do we stand with that at the moment?
Well, the deal was essentially that the developer got 6 months to commence or finish the project and meet the deadlines that have been put into the actual agreements. In exchange for that 6-month extension, if you will, the City of Syracuse is going to receive $1 million from the developer. This is really a question of trying to balance two interests. On the one hand, having an empty mall expansion is not in the interests of the City of Syracuse. We would like it to be full so it generates sales tax at the very least. But on the other hand, the people of the City of Syracuse have been very generous and have waited a long time for the promises of an expanded Carousel Mall, or Destiny as it's known in central New York, to come to fruition. So you try to balance both of those, and I think that we did a good job, and we got some much needed revenue for the city of Syracuse, and at the same time we gave the developer an opportunity to make that asset perform.
Well, tough times, and certainly for those that aren't familiar, a very ambitious project. Are you confident moving forward that, you know, this thing's going to come to fruition someday, hopefully down the road?
Well, I think that's squarely in the hands of the developer. That's their job, that's their business. We've given them an opportunity, and in fact, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago that the developer said they had everything that they needed to succeed.
All right. Syracuse Mayor Stephanie Miner, thanks so much for your time this evening.
Thank you,
We
Ryan.
appreciate it.